supposed to start out even like this? It isn't. It's this way. Cops have the advantage, and you have to overcome that. And that's really the challenge of these cases. So every case, even though you might believe it's true, you may not be able to win the case. So you have to be able to make a decision about it. But I always look to see what the tiebreaker is. And in police shooting cases, that's extraordinarily important. You know, you got to have, because a police shooting case means the police officer feared that their life was in danger. Well, they get credit for that, all right? So then the question is, would a reasonable police officer have believed that their life was in danger? And so therefore, you then have to go back, dissect those facts, and figure out what a reasonable police officer would have done. An officer cannot subjectively say, I was afraid for my life, and that's the end of the story. The story has to be, what is the, and this is the legal standard. There's a case called Graham versus Connors that came out of the U.S. Supreme Court back in the 80s that essentially set the standards. And the standard is the burden of proof. It's called, it's an objectively reasonable standard. So that's really what we live by. And I often have to say, look, I can't prove it. You know, I hear you, and I think it would be bad stuff happen to you, but I can't prove it. And so therefore, I can't do it. Or I might get in early and say, I don't think I can prove this case. But that's what you got to do. And there's what they call Rule 11 in the federal court, means if you bring a case that you don't factually have not properly investigated, you can be sanctioned. And so, like I told a young lawyer today, you need to go out and make sure that what these people said happened, we can prove that it happened. Because I don't want the judge to come in and ask me, what did I do or not do? Otherwise, it's, you get sanctioned, and it's very important not to get sanctioned.
You said you're involved in a case involving Occupy Oakland with some standards that have been set with the Iraqi protest.
Yeah.
Do you think the Occupy movement nationally will refresh time, place, manner standards for how government and police in particular deal with protest?
That is a good question. I don't know and have not looked at the Occupy Oakland from a nationwide perspective on how the police ought to do this. I do know this. Every place in the country looks to find out what the hell did Oakland do, and then they don't want to do it. So, and I know I was in New York and Atlanta, and not Atlanta and D.C., and the commentary was always about not here, not like what happened in Oakland, which then means like what cases are supposed to do. Cases are supposed to teach you the right way to do something, because ultimately it turns into money if you don't do it right. And so from a risk management point of view, cities around the country that have occupied situations will look to Oakland to see what the hell did Oakland do, and then make sure they don't do it. Now then what Oakland has to do is to see what we have done and why that was wrong, and to make sure we don't do it the next time. And so we're part of that process. Part of what I'm doing is as part of the writers team, monitoring team, is to monitor all the stuff that takes place in Oakland to see whether or not it's up there. And we have a federal judge, so we get to look. I get to look at these issues. And so part of what I get to do is not just the individual case and move on. I do get a chance to see how we can change the process, and that's very, very important to me in terms of as a lawyer. Any others?
One more question. It appears in a lot of major metropolitan areas, the position of chief of police is kind of a revolving door.
Sure.
And you mentioned the culture of a police department. With such turnover, how do you see culture being able to be changed in these police departments?
Well, that's a good question. How do you change the culture of a police department? That is not easy to do. Now, police chief generally is a very political position. It can come from the ranks, but ultimately, it's like every place else. People get promoted, and police are very ambitious folks. They start out as patrol officers. At the end of the day, they're looking for the next position, which is sergeant, then lieutenant, then captain, and ultimately commander, and then maybe chief. Why this is important? Because it affects their retirement. Each position has a retirement benefit that's associated with it. So when you retire at 20 years, there's a big difference between a lieutenant and a captain and a chief. And so there's real ambition. At the end of the day, though, the chief, as I've told other chiefs in the past, you're not just loyal to the officers that you're under your deal. You have a challenging position that is a political position that you have to respond to the public, the mayor, the city manager, whoever that might be. You have the police union, which is another entity that's extraordinarily powerful in it. You have the rank and file, and then you have the community. These are all forces that are entities that a police chief has to respect. It is not uncommon to have a police chief not to last more than 5 years. That's just not, it's not uncommon for that to occur. Great, because you have to be a bit of a ringmaster to some extent to do that. Now, the culture of a department is difficult to change. And a lot of this stuff, like for example, LA had a reputation as an occupying force, okay? Oakland had a reputation as an occupying force. They would recruit these officers from the South, and these were big burly guys, and they were very demanding. This caused the Black Panther unit, Black Panthers to come into fro based upon how the Oakland police treated African Americans in the 1960s. That's how they go. That culture, to some extent, is still there. We have worked very mightily trying to change it. Each police chief has tried, and there has been some progress. But we still have a lot of shootings. Now, shootings are not necessarily just a function of that. I mean, there are bad stuff that happens in a town, and police are afraid, and so they're kind of quick. My job is to figure out whether that quickness was justified or not. And so, but the culture of policing is a challenge, and police chiefs do not last long. If they last 5 years, they've been in a job a long time, you know. Otherwise, they're 3 to 5 year people.
For a first or second year law student, what's a good place to get some practical experience in civil rights and constitutional law?
Well, I was just talking about a second year student out of Oregon, first year student out of Oregon today. I think that there are, for example, the Employment Law Center in San Francisco does a lot of excellent work. The Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights does excellent work. The Equal Rights Committee, Equal Rights Organization in San Francisco does good work. Certainly those areas, but I would also say that that one should look outside of a particular area. This areas around. There are law firms, bigger law firms certainly than mine, that does class action work. You guys have a bit of a challenge, though, obviously. You should know that. I mean, you have more of a challenge in getting into these places than others might have. But it is a good idea to try to get in place as best you can, you know. I would say first-year students generally don't get paid, you know. They're interns. You are more likely to get something if you're volunteering. Second-year students more likely to get paid than a first-year. A first-year student is not going to get paid generally, you know. And in many ways, as I always say, you ought to be paying me because first-year students don't know enough, really. Working for judges, getting a law clerkship with a judge, pretty easy to do. You know, whatever county you're in, it helps to know somebody, of course. But all these judges have people come in and write memos for them for the summer. They have a whole program. I'm sure Contra Costa have it. I know Alameda County has it. It's not necessarily civil rights, but what you really want is to see the law, how it functions. And being in a clerkship around a judge, I sent my daughter to a judge last year. She did that. And so I know that those are good places to go. But you go around, there are places to go, you know. No, she had her hand up first.
You mentioned you did employment discrimination. So I just wanted to know what your thoughts were about the unemployed, if you find that possibly being a discriminant group in the future because there's so many. And the only reason I ask is because I've noticed, helping my sister trying to find a job, there's in their ads, must be currently employed.
Yeah, I haven't looked at that, but that might be, just say, a new area because being currently employed, I don't know if anybody would call that discriminatory, but that strikes me as a public policy question that either an ordinance of some kind, or the state legislature should have. That area would be run by the Department of Social Services and the Attorney General's office. That strikes me as something that, that should be looked at from their point of view in terms of applications, because that probably is fundamentally wrong. You know, from my point of view, that seems wrong. But that's when you talk about new civil rights, that's the kind of thing that you'll see. Say, what the hell, something ought to be done about this. And what happens, a lawyer then has to, a lawyer takes it and fights through it and develops new law, you know? Yeah.
Do you see yourself possibly becoming a judge?
No, hell no. Look, that's not my deal. I mean, number one, I'm past the age to do it, but number two, I've always had to answer hell no, okay? And I say that because I know people ascribe to think that that's a model job and all that, and that might be for some. But I'm an advocate, and that's how I see it, and that I'm an advocate. But if you have a judicious temperament, and that's what you like, then yeah, then that's fine. There are people who want to do that. People fight vigorously for these jobs, for judgeships. I would say that if you have an interest, you've got to be political.